and much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program.
Build plans.
So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion allocated for Project Gigabit in total, so that was for the whole country. Much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded through Project Gigabit, which is the government's new sort of flagship program. So there was £5 billion pounds allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for projects like this, and that includes some towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by facilities that are being used on commercial program and built out. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded by gigabit other than being used on commercial and built. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure investing in vehicles
remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion allocated for infrastructure vehicles and other towns, but much of the remaining 20% will be upgraded and give the teams apart from being used on the commercial flagship program and build again. So there was £5 billion
maybe two masts, because they tend to share. You tend to get sort of the infrastructure shared by a couple of sort of mobile network operators, but with this solution, it's just sort of one mast. And I think the carrot that's sort of being dangled to the mobile network operators is because the neutral hosts are actually building the mast, it means that the mobile network operators don't have to. They just put their equipment on the mast and pay a fee for that. So we're looking at the moment with Icon Tower, we're looking at a couple of sites, one in Wellesbourne, where obviously Wellesbourne has grown quite substantially over last few years. But there are areas where there's really poor coverage, so we're looking to hopefully sort of build a mast there. Another area is Tyso, and on the Herbert's farm sort of site, there's like a sewage plant, and that we're looking to hopefully put a sort of a mast there that would serve
we're looking to
upper, middle, and lower Tyso, and also Ox Hill.
Another area is Tyso,
and
on the Herbert's farm sort of site, there's like a sewage
would basically
plant,
sort of provide better
we're looking to
coverage in
hopefully
an area
put
where coverage is really
sort
poor.
of a mast there that would
we're
looking to upper, middle, and lower Tyso and Ox Hill. Another area is Tyso, and on the Herbert's farm sort of site, there's like a sewage plant, and that's we're looking to hopefully put a sort of a mast there. We're looking to upper, middle, and lower Tyso and Ox Hill. Another area is Tyso, and on the Herbert's farm sort of site, there's like a sewage plant, and that's we're looking to hopefully put a sort of a mast there. We're looking to upper, middle, and lower Tyso and Ox Hill. Another area is Tyso, and on the Herbert's farm sort of site, there's like a sewage plant, and that's we're looking to hopefully put a sort of a mast there. We're looking to upper, middle, and lower Tyso and Ox Hill. Another area is Tyso, and on the Herbert's farm.
This brochure. Basically, the River Severn Partnership is one of 10 innovation region projects that the government have funded. The River Severn Partnership covers 7 counties, which are sort of in the River Severn catchment area, but because the Warwickshire-Avon feeds into the River Severn, we were sort of included as well and asked to be, were asked if we would be interested in being included. So the River Severn Partnership's a £4 million initiative. It's 100% funded by DSITS, so Department of Science, Innovation and Technology. As I said, it covers 7 counties. Their core aim is to accelerate and exploit the use of technology enabled by advanced wireless connectivity to create opportunities for economic growth whilst generating efficiencies that benefit the environment and society as a whole. So the aim of this and all the innovation projects is basically to develop use cases. Oh, sorry, Howard. Could you go on to the next slide, sorry. So the aim is for the River Severn Partnership to develop use cases that will further the case for the mainstream adoption of advanced wireless connectivity across the region and the wider UK. So all of these different projects are doing different things using almost like pilot studies and use cases to see whether it works, and then the idea is to roll those out to sort of other areas, either within the region or the wider UK. So the River Severn Partnership has chosen, it's been sort of run by Shropshire, they're overseeing it, but all the counties are involved doing different projects. And they're focusing on 3 sectors, which is water management, rural industries, and the public sector. Next slide, please, Howard. So how's Warwickshire involved with the River Severn Partnership? Well, we're leading on different strands. So there's the mobile broadband booster scheme. So this is providing sort of broadband routers and mobile amplifiers to businesses where there's really poor network access. And this isn't just in Warwickshire, it's across the whole of the River Severn region. But one of the local companies that has taken us up on this and benefited from it is Warwickshire Aviation, which is based in Wellesbourne. So they were really struggling with poor broadband connection speeds, and this is affecting how the sort of company operated. So we lent them a mobile router. I won't get too technical into it, but a mobile router and an antenna. And we fitted that with an O2 and an EE SIM card. And that's provided a far more stable connection and improved their speeds. And it basically made a big difference to how they're sort of operating. So the idea of the loan scheme is obviously to loan it to them for a few months to see, you know, the possibilities, and then if they want to, they can sort of purchase the equipment, or we can provide them with the information where they can purchase brand new equipment. But they've decided to actually sort of ask us if they could buy the equipment that we've loaned them, So they've now sort of got that permanently until, I suppose the bigger picture plans of fixed fibre broadband, gigabit capable broadband, and better sort of mobile connectivity from the networks is available in that area. So it's providing them with a solution through which they can operate until we get sort of far better connectivity in the areas. And the final slide, please, Howard. So what else can we do to improve connectivity and sort of facilitate the faster deployment of both broadband and mobile connectivity? So we're sort of involved with sort of developing a number of barrier busting initiatives. So we're developing a Streetworks toolkit, which is basically working with Warwickshire Highways and the broadband suppliers, so that when a broadband supplier comes into Warwickshire, we give them the toolkit and say, this is what we expect from you, this is what you can expect from us and the Highways Department. So everybody knows sort of what the expectations are to hopefully facilitate smoother deployment. We're also looking to work with, DCIT are currently looking at sort of flexi permit trials. So at the moment, if a broadband supplier wanted to go into a street, say in Stratford, they obviously have to apply for, sort of a permit. They then sort of find that there's an issue in that sort of street, so they can't actually do anything in that street until that issue's sorted out. So it slows down effectively the deployment. With a flexi permit, that might cover 10 streets. So if you've got an issue in one street that they can't sort of deal with, they can go and sort of work in the other streets and sort of expand the deployment while that sort of issue is being sorted out. So it's all ways of sort of accelerating the deployment of the infrastructure. We've also submitted a document for the South Warwickshire local plan and for the other sort of districts and boroughs when their local plans come around. And it's basically stipulating what we think digital infrastructure requirements should be for developers to consider. So in terms of mobile coverage and broadband coverage. With the broadband coverage, for example, we suggested that it should be 2 actual suppliers, because sometimes companies like Persimmon, they've got their own broadband company, and if they put broadband in, then the resident or business has to go with that company, whereas by stipulating that we have 2 networks, one of which is a wholesale network, and everything that we do is a wholesale network, so that gives people a range of internet service providers that they can choose from. It doesn't mean that they have to choose just the one. We're utilising sort of existing assets, as I said, street lighting columns for small cell deployment. Public sector buildings as well can also potentially host infrastructure. We'll utilise further government funding opportunities. As Rich mentioned, we're on a meeting yesterday where they're looking to provide more sort of Project Gigabit financial resources to basically mop up sort of areas to ensure that nowhere is left behind. And also we'll explore sort of opportunities working more closely with obviously Stratford district planning teams and sort of strategic assets, again to try and sort of accelerate digital connectivity rollout across the district. So that's it. Sorry if it's quite a long sort of presentation, but because we're now sort of covering more areas and the fact that we haven't been for a number of years, we just wanted to give you an update on what we're doing currently, and happy to take any questions if you've got them.
Right, thank you, gentlemen. First question is, you don't mind us circulating the slides that you sent to Harry?
No, not at all. No.
So that's good. There's lots of information on there. Secondly, I was interested to see that about Warwickshire Aviation at Wellesbourne. Obviously, to help with broadband and make it more stable. Now that they've got it, do you think it will take off in other places?
Well, I think
you missed that one, didn't you?
I think it's sort of, oh yeah, very good. Yeah, sorry, I've just got you got the dad joke filter on today, Andy.
Sorry.
Yes, I think as I say, the whole idea of the sort of booster scheme is to provide a temporary solution until a more permanent solution is in place with regards to the fixed broadband rollout that will obviously take place through Project Gigabit or commercial suppliers and build programs, but also sort of in terms of improving sort of mobile connectivity as well. So it's basically providing a solution for these businesses that are really sort of struggling at the moment to operate until a more permanent solution comes along. But we've got a number of these devices, and we'd be more than happy if any of the councillors get sort of inquiries from residents or businesses more really with this, that need help. Please pass the details on to us, and we can see what we can do. The great thing, we've got a fantastic mapping and a sort of data analysis team. A couple of our colleagues sort of work on that, and we can then sort of look at all the information that we've got from mobile network operators, coverage and things like that, to see what would be the best solution for those areas.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. 'Cause I think there was a serious point there, believe it or not.
I know.
The fact that businesses are under enough pressure as it is, that they're trying to keep their costs down and try and make sure they're getting enough, their customers can get hold of them, or they can put their products out to the market. So I think that's an important point. I know when in the past people have been sceptical about receiving equipment, or oh, you need to buy this because this will definitely work, and then they get it and it doesn't work. So therefore, if you're loaning it to them, there's no cost to them. They can see it works, they've got trust and confidence, and then in their case they bought it from you, didn't they? So I think that's important. So I think that's really important. So I think we need to get that message out. I think there's lots of things in the slides we can help publicise as well. I've got some other questions, but I've rambled on a bit, so I'll let Councillor Wally Hoggins come in first then, please.
Hi.
Thank you. So just how much bite do you have with these companies if they're not rolling out fast enough or being too picky and choosy as to where they're going? I mean, I'm heartened to see that Tyso is there on your hit list, really, but I'm a bit shocked that it's taken that long because, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know I'm not wrong, that it actually has a primary school there, so they absolutely need that connectivity there for many reasons. And I mean, how proactive are you being? Also, delighted to hear about the you can report we've got poor coverage. Is that going to be just for 5G, or is that going to be for internet connection and all sorts of things?
It's more for the mobile side of things, and it's probably going to be a little while until it's sort of up and running. We're trying to. It's a little bit frustrating. We're trying to sort of speed it up, but it's just sort of internal, sort of working with the web team, etc., in Warwickshire County Council as to what's possible and what isn't. The map that was on there was referring to, with regards to Tyso, was just referring to mobile connectivity. I think we've done a lot of work in terms of broadband connectivity within that area through the Superfast programme and again through Project Gigabit. With the mobile side of things, as I say, it's all sort of relatively new. We've probably only been looking at it for sort of a year, as other sort of projects like ours around the country have. The difficulty is with mobile network operators, it's one of those cases where you can drag a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, and that's why we're looking at alternative solutions like neutral host providers who incur the cost of building the mast, etc., which is can be quite considerable, and then it's a case of, okay, we've got this infrastructure here, then inviting the mobile network operators to come and put their sort of equipment on to provide services sort of in that area. So I think one of the great things about the River Severn partnership is that through this drive-by study, which is it's the largest independent study in the UK that's been undertaken across 7 or 8 counties. We've now got that sort of data together. Our sort of mapping team is actually leading on sort of the analysis of the data for the whole region. But because we're sort of joined forces, we feel as though we've got a bit more bite, so we are sort of lobbying sort of Ofcom, etc., to try and get more sort of more accurate information out of them through the MNOs. And that's starting to gain traction, and I think it's actually, the River Severn Partnership, as I said, is being sort of run by Shropshire, but I think they are looking at actually trying to get the MNOs in, but also sort of lobbying local MPs. I don't know if, I'm sure some of you have heard of the Rural Services Network. The River Severn Partnership did a presentation on that last week, and there was a lot of interest there from around the country. So it's galvanising support and momentum. So hopefully we can start getting more accurate information out of the mobile network operators, because we know they've got it. But, you know, you see these adverts on the TV and it says, oh, 99% coverage or 95% coverage. It's not, you know. And so through this, the River Severn Partnership, we've actually been able to sort of, you know, bring a whole area together. We're all saying, oh, this isn't very accurate. You know, we need to start lobbying sort of Ofcom and the mobile network operators. But I think we need to do it in a diplomatic sort of way with the mobile network operators. We could go to them and be all, you know, sort of confrontational, but we're never going to get anywhere with that. We need to start collaborating more with them, which we're starting to do, in order to, you know, sort of engineer change.
Can I just say that it would be very useful for us as some rural councillors here to have direct contact details for you for our businesses that are struggling with connectivity, so they can get in touch with you directly. So can we make sure that's part of it? And I noticed
it's on the last slide, which I didn't show, but those will be circulated. So it's got sort of an email address for the team on there.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Next, Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'm glad you had Tyso up there, because I live in one of those red hexagons. It's not straightforward, is it? Because South Warwickshire is built of ironstone, and you can have as much power outside the door, you'll never get it through a foot of traditionally built ironstone. You've got a Faraday cage which works very efficiently. So that's going to be an issue. So to a lot of people who are working from home, and a high proportion of professional people in the villages do work from home, very sensibly, then the alternative would be ultra-fast broadband.
Yeah.
Tyso, and along with a lot of villages in South Warwickshire, woke up about 2 or 3 years ago to a new pandemic, which was telegraph poles. They appeared overnight without warning or consideration in conservation areas. Often, I can take 2 or 3 examples easily where they actually put another pole in next to an existing pole. When confronted and politely confronted, they said, it's not a problem, they'll pay us to take it out if it's in the wrong place. There's a mile on the stretch outside of Tyso with telegraph poles every 10 metres or so, which have been there for several years without any cabling or any work going forward. Seems to be no competition, because although I can look out of my sitting room window and see on a pole a reel of cable, fibre optic cable hanging, waiting to be installed, I don't really want to use the provider who's got that area. I want to use BT because I have other reasons. Yet BT don't seem to see the infrastructures in place. So I wonder, what control there is from BD UK over these sorts of enterprises where it's a fairly cowboy attitude sometimes. It looks a bit like a land grab, I think, when it first started. And you've got people there who really don't care, and yet we can't go anywhere else if you want to use another service provider, because it's not recognised. So I find it difficult to reconcile the need, and there is a definite need for this, and I really strongly support it, but it's what can be done to make sure that it's actually implemented in a correct and competitive manner. Thank you.
I think I know the sort of area that you're talking about, and it was a private provider, commercial builder that sort of built a lot in that area. Although we oversee the sort of BDUK project in sort of Warwickshire, we don't actually directly work for BDUK. We're sort of Warwickshire County Council, but we do sort of obviously feed in issues that we have. So I know that this provider decided that it would be a good, I think I'm correct in saying it was in Tyso, a good idea to erect a telegraph pole right in front of the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit sign, which is near the doctor's surgery and also near the primary school. So we were sort of made aware of that through Councillor Mills, and we did sort of speak to them, and I think I'm correct in saying that they did sort of move it. But I think the issue is that our project, we only go in areas where there is no commercial appetite to do so, to ensure that that areas don't miss out effectively. And the issue is that obviously in the more rural areas, the likes of Openreach, etc., on a commercial basis might think, well, it's not economically viable for us to do that. So it's that there is less competition, unfortunately, and because this particular company had got in there and were effectively providing broadband, that meant that we weren't allowed to sort of intervene in that area. Because obviously it's really expensive to deploy, and particularly as you get into the more rural areas, it is, you know, I mean, at the end of the Superfast programme, we were looking at sort of places where it was going to cost sort of £20,000-30,000 just to connect one property, which, you know, we couldn't do because we had sort of restrictions in place with BDUK in terms of like a ceiling, financial ceiling in terms of, you know, sort of what was economically viable for us as well. So it's tricky, and I understand what you're saying about poles, and I went for a walk actually in Tyso a couple of months ago, and I saw those poles coming out of the village, and I thought, oh, I wonder who's sort of, you know, whose those are. I assumed they were Openreach. I'm not sure whether they are. Are they the private company that we're talking about? Yeah, okay. So I mean, I think the only thing we can do really is that if you do have any complaints or whatever, then we can sort of see if there is anything that we can sort of, you know, we can relay them onto BDUK or actually the provider themselves to see if anything's done. And the particular sort of broadband provider you're on about, we were alerted about a number of issues with them a couple of years ago. And as you say, it was quite a cowboy operation at the time. And we did get involved, even though it's nothing to do with our project, and try to sort things out as much as we could. I know it's a little bit...
Yeah, could you just slightly change the tone, the word, sort of like cable operator? They weren't following approved practices?
Yes, yeah, okay, sorry. What I was going to go on to say to mitigate is that we are sort of dealing, or have had some dealings with them as well. They've had quite a change around in the last couple of years. It's now much more sort of, their operations within the county are now much more sort of as we would expect professionally. I think one of the subcontractors that they were using, they no longer work with.
I believe, if quite right, we've had similar issues with certain types of contractors, and I believe that their permit was suspended until practices were improved.
Yeah. So we basically helped to put a plan in place in terms of how they should operate, how their civils should operate, because I'm sure you've heard about them, but there are all sorts of nightmare stories of just, you know, people coming back home and finding that their sort of road has been dug up and they hadn't been given any prior notice about it whatsoever. So they now operate on a much more sort of professional footing, shall we say.
So
and again, the whole point of having the Streetworks toolkit to what their expectations are and what we can provide is helping to manage that, because yes, you're right about a couple of things, is that the rural, semi-rural, there's people around, whereas, you know, the more urban areas, you know, in south of my road got dug up 4 times. And it resembled the Somme at times rather than the road, and so yeah, and I think eventually the contractors got the message that they had to be more considerate, had to do code of practice, and one actually went through the Severn Trent water, they call them boundary boxes, dug through those and just covered them up with tarmac. So that was just along the road from a councillor who, i.e. me, who spotted it. And so, yeah, and I think that is one of the concerns that I was going to raise, and other members here, that the behaviour of some contractors, and whilst I accept your point that sometimes you're limited in places like Tyso with only one person come forward, it still doesn't give them the right to disrespect the community and take advantage. And, you know, the bit about the pole in front of the 30-mile-an-hour zone near a school in the doctors is completely ludicrous, so I'm glad that was sorted out. So,
yeah, I think, as I say, I think it's fair to say that of all the operators within sort of Warwickshire, the only one that we've had any issues with was this particular one, and they have now sort of, you know, changed practices. They've had quite a few sort of change personnel, and it's now much more sort of professional sort of operator. In terms of the sort of Project Gigabit rollout that's with City Fibre, they have their own civils company called Callan Connect that they invested in, set up. So they have, and the dealings that we've had with them so far are very professional. They're really good, and I think, you know, there won't be sort of issues with them sort of moving forwards. Generally, OpenReach are pretty sort of good. So and a lot of the altnets that we've dealt with as well, companies like GigaClear, etc., are really sort of, you know, good as well. So, but the idea of the toolkit, as you say, we haven't sort of finalised it yet. We're working with highways on it, but is to ensure that there are those standards in place before spades go into the ground, as it were. Just one final sort of point on you mentioned about telegraph poles. I think nationwide people are sort of, you know, there seems to be a lot more objections to sort of telegraph poles. Unfortunately, the reality is that by providing sort of fibre broadband via sort of spans overground through telegraph poles is probably 10 to 20 times cheaper than doing it underground. Without wishing to sound too blunt, it's a case of, well, if these areas want it, that is the most cost-effective way of doing it. But we totally take on board, and we've had incidents as well where people have sort of, as you said, put up a telegraph pole, and there's a perfectly sort of decent telegraph pole next to it, which they could potentially use because that is OpenReach's pole, and under PIA agreements they can use their infrastructure. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to work the other way around at the moment, whereby OpenReach are happy to use other broadband suppliers' sort of infrastructure. But I think that's sort of being worked on as well within government.
Councillor Fradgley, please.
Thank you, Chair. When the fields on the edge of Stratford...
Ian, could you just bring your microphone just a little bit towards you? That's great. Thank you.
All right. When the fields on the edge of town are turned into new housing, and there's quite a bit of that being proposed in the future, when I move into my new home on day one, will I have access to what you've been talking about?
You should do. There was, I think OpenReach have stated that sort of 99% of all new builds will, you know, sort of have fibre to the premise, which is the gigabit capable broadband. So there was a period of time when development sort of around 2016 sort of, and I think before that for a number of years, where it wasn't actually in the national planning policy framework that broadband provision had to be provided. It wasn't a legal requirement. You had to have landline, but not broadband. And there was, I think the government, National Federation of House Builders, Openreach, etc., worked together, and basically at that time the developer still had to request sort of broadband. Openreach would say, well, we can provide it for you, but they still had to actually request it. And I think developers often thought, well, this is we're going to have to pay for this, so we're not going to do it. We used to have nightmare scenarios whereby you would have a development where they'd got it in the marketing suite of the developer, but not in the actual sort of properties. That now doesn't tend to happen, and the majority of new houses, because people want broadband and are much more savvy to checking whether it's actually in there, but it does tend to be provided now. And a lot of places around the country, when estate agents are selling houses, it will have the broadband speeds, etc., as part of the details, almost like the energy ratings and sort of utility information as well, because it is in effect the fourth utility now.
Councillor Johnston, please.
I was going to join the conversation about Tyso, but include Wellesbourne. And I think, to a degree, you've answered the questions in relation to Tyso, which I had been asking. Wellesbourne's had a problem with connectivity on the mobile network for years, and I know we had one of the estates, which you've just talked about, where broadband was not installed at the beginning. Are you looking basically for the location of a mast in Wellesbourne? And my question really is, this isn't part of the public conversation in Wellesbourne at the moment. I don't want to apply pressure when pressure's not going to be helpful, but would it be useful if there was more local engagement in this conversation?
Yeah, so we've actually identified a site which is on Highways sort of adopted land within Wellesbourne that will cover the sort of a number of the areas where there is sort of not spots. We're working with a company sort of on that, a neutral host provider that are looking to build, and I think we had a meeting with them a couple of weeks ago, and they're now looking at sort of putting in sort of or developing that, but they, like both the neutral host providers that we work with, recognise the advantage of sort of like the pre-planning application process, so engaging with the community, with the parish councils, etc., to say we've identified these as areas of poor connectivity. We would like to sort of improve that, and I think there has been a bit of a culture change in that people realise that how essential mobile connectivity is as well, sort of in the rural areas. So we'd identify certain areas with these companies, and then they would actually approach or will approach the parishes or whatever, the town councils, to say we've identified this location as a potential site. This is what the advantages will be, to try and iron out any sort of issues or objections that there might be before actually putting planning permission in, because it makes sense, really, doesn't it? It's common sense to engage with the community rather than, as we were just talking about with some of the broadband operators, just slapping in sort of a planning application and turning up and starting the work. That's only going to get residents' backs up. But if we can identify the sites, say these are the advantages, this is the problem that it'll solve, future-proofing those areas, then that will be, sort of that's the intention, to iron out any issues that there might be before sort of planning application goes in, which will then hopefully make it a smoother process.
Just want to say I think it'd be helpful if we could be engaged in that as soon as possible.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So I have sort of looked at who the sort of local councillors were, etc., and passed those on to ICON. But I will sort of next week sort of just ensure that sort of that there is that engagement. And I think, as I also mentioned with the sort of the South Warwickshire local plan, if we can identify sort of areas, I know that this is sort of long term, but when those areas are finalised as to where they're looking to develop, if we can get sort of mobile connectivity, in particular with the masts, built before, the development starts, when people are actually looking at those houses and they can see that there's a mast there, it's almost like, oh, well, there's mobile coverage here already. It's already in situ, which is a much better proposal than when they're paying however much for their houses and then someone decides that they're going to put a mast up. So it's sort of, I suppose it's really just getting all those sort of connectivity ducks in line before and making it as easy and smooth a transition for deployment as possible. But yeah, engagement is certainly the way forwards.
Brilliant. I think we'll bring it to a close now. Going on, I've just got a couple of points. One, there was some slightly concerned me. There were some comments about 95 to 99% coverage, which you get information.
It's not true.
And we know that's true. And the fact that the network operators are potentially sending model data to Ofcom, if I heard you say that correctly. So therefore, and whether we can write to Ofcom ourselves as Scrutiny to say that we would like to see accurate information rather than something that could be termed as misleading by people, not necessarily me, of course, but can be. I'm being careful. I've got the legal officer by my side. I'm expecting a jump in the side. So so that all will be good. And just to end on a positive, what do you think your biggest success is of the rollout programme so far?
I think sort of if we're looking in terms of the overall timeline that the project has actually been in existence, as we mentioned at the beginning, the fact that sort of if we look at Stratford district, we basically brought superfast broadband, which I know we're now on to the next iteration, but at that time, superfast broadband to over 40% of Stratford district properties that basically wouldn't have got it without our intervention. And it'll be sort of a similar sort of scenario with the Project Gigabit. We are here basically to provide sort of gigabit-capable, future-proof broadband to areas within Warwickshire that aren't going to sort of where commercial suppliers are not interested in sort of taking it themselves. It might not be economically viable. So yeah, I think it's a long-term sort of project, obviously, but we have made great strides, and certainly in terms of the broadband, and we're looking to do the same with the mobile side of things as well. I think just to pick up on your point, I think by acting as a collective with the River Severn Partnership and sort of all the counties involved might have a little bit more weight than if we sort of have the districts and each individual districts and borough sort of writing to them, because there is a groundswell of momentum that is sort of building across the country, not just the region, on the back of this study, to basically say to Ofcom, come on, start providing us with more accurate information. And I think that's now sort of obviously sort of plans are to lobby that sort of with local MPs and in Westminster, and I think hopefully it will have a positive outcome.
So using the River Severn Partnership, you could say the tide's turning on this one. And on that note, I think
you should have been a writer of headlines. I think using puns.
I've got the legal officer. What's going to, Marcy, please.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the monitoring officer for SDC, and just to clarify on the point that you made, which is probably a good idea to suggest that a joint a letter or correspondence come through yourself, but I just wanted to clarify that OSC have their own governance and powers as well, which means that they can make recommendations to our Cabinet and Council if they wanted to send their own letter.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make that very clear.
Okay, yes, yeah. I think the best thing is, obviously, as I say, we're not sort of running the River Severn, we're part of it, but we're not overseeing the sort of running of the project. I know that there are sort of plans in development, so I'll find out sort of more about those and then I can sort of feedback.
Thank you very much. That was really informative. And Councillor Rolfe, you just sneaked in.
A very quick question, and this may seem very trivial, But when you do put these telegraph poles in, can you think about aesthetics? They are shiny silver, incredibly ugly. They stick out like a sore thumb. Is there anything you can do about, I dare use the phrase making them more attractive, but if they are putting soft ground, can you grow something up them so they're kind of disguised a bit? Can they be black instead of shiny, bright grey? Can you look at something that makes them look better? I mean, I've got one in Tiddington that's just every time, I get moaned at constantly because it is seriously hideous.
So you're talking about telegraph poles or the actual mobile sort of masts? I'm not sure what sort of, certainly in terms of the site that we're sort of looking at in
Gavin, can we, perhaps if you can find information out, or what the policies are around that for us, and then and come back to us offline via Mr. Allison.
I know that sort of with the neutral host providers, they do look at areas with tree sort of coverage to try and mask it as much as possible, but obviously it does need to be above the tree line, as it were, otherwise you don't get the signal. So,
brilliant. Thank you very much. That's really helpful, and apologies for the technical problems we've been having today. It's quite ironic, isn't it? We're talking about connectivity and we have technical problems. So yeah, it just mirrors some of the frustrations that residents in poor reception areas are getting as well. So we're getting a taste of our own medicine. So thank you very much. Glad to see you, and perhaps next time you come again, we'll have you back on the stage as well. Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Yeah. Right. I think I'll propose we have an adjournment. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we need to one in the members just going out. So if we have a break till 25 past, that would be good. And it'll perhaps give you a chance to warm up as well, Kate, by getting yourself a drink. So thank you for that. We're all back, aren't we? Right then. Thank you very much. Hopefully people have had a drink and warmed up a bit. Right then, we'll go back onto the agenda, which is item number 5, the annual work programme. Obviously pages 1 to 14 of our report. We've got the proposed work programme for 25-26, which hopefully you've all read. But we are right then. God, I've never seen so many hands go up so quickly. I will have a point as well to make as well. So I'll go in that order. I didn't see because I got my head down looking at the papers. Who came up first? I'll go Councillor Johnston, Councillor Rolfe. Peter, do you indicate as well? No, Councillor Littlewood. No. Oh, so it's Councillor Johnston and then Councillor Rolfe first.
I'm just wondering if the County Council portfolio holder for fire and rescue and community safety can really do this presentation on the 4th of April.
That was my point as well.
Oh, right.
I was going to raise that one, David. Councillor Rolfe, have you got a similar one or is it something else?
No, mine is different.
Oh, brilliant.
So, on the 29th of October, we've got the Ellen Badger Hospital. I think that should be brought forward. I seriously think it should be brought forward to maximum July, the 2nd of July. And I think the issue is slightly bigger than, I mean, we've had the feedback from the consultation. I think we need, and by July they should know a lot more, which we need to question. And I think it's a lot bigger than just the Ellen Badger. I think we ought to, I'd like to hear what's happening with Upper Lighthorn and the doctor's surgery. So if that could be added and brought forward to July, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Whilst I agree, I agree with the potential of it being brought forward. There's a couple of points I'd like to make. One, we are reliant on the ICB coming towards us. We have asked them to, we give them an invite. So that's the one thing, we could ask them to come. And secondly, if we are going to expand what we're asking from them, they might need to bring different people, more people. So again, about availability, who can come. And I think we also need to be clear of our remit, what we're going to ask them, rather than just say Ellen Badger or community rehabilitation. Mr. Perks, come on in, please.
I was just picking up Councillor Rolfe's second point. In terms of the Upper Lighthorn thing, if the panel particularly interested in that, we are working in partnership. In fact, we're leading that project, so I could bring an update for that at any of your meetings without needing the ICB as background for you, if that would be useful.
Yeah, that would be useful. And I think we do, in principle, try and bring this forward as much as possible. But if we can leave it to officers to negotiate with the ICB to come up with an optimum time, but again, I think we need to give them a clear steer of what we want to talk about rather than just be vague or woolly. So that, Councillor Rolfe, do you want to come back?
Well, I think it's just basically an update. We need to have an update on what their thinking is. Yeah, we'll know by the third week in March anyway, and they need to come back to let us know how they're going to put that into operation. Yeah,
that wasn't quite what you said when you first mentioned it, because it seemed to be the general Ellen Badger. So as long as I want to make sure we maximise the time and have the right people here to ask the questions, because it's no good having some people who are really good at their job, but they're not the expert in that area. So if we, I would like to give them a steer of what we wanted, because if we are too woolly with what they're asking, we might spend an hour talking about things and not get to hear the answers that we want. So I think if that would help, and if we can get the officers to one, collate the areas that we want to speak, and to liaise with ICB about their attendance and things like that. Councillor Wally-Huggins, I've got you next, please.
Yeah, it's just a thought really that the fact that the impacts of local government reorganisation is coming on the 27th of August, I actually think that such is the seriousness and gravity of this, that this almost needs to be a standing agenda item now, just to have updates so that we're made aware, because the final submission doesn't happen until November anyway, does it? So I'm wondering I suppose what I'm trying to articulate here is there are going to be developments happening with this and decisions are being made ongoing, and whether or not we need to be in a position as a committee to be more flexible when news comes in of things that are happening. So if it became an agenda item, we are already having meetings, there's a working party meeting, and I just think by doing that we're showing our residents that we're being prudent, that every step of the way options are being scrutinised and decisions are being scrutinised. I realise that this may extend meeting times. However, not since the 1970s have we had this, and this is going to have a dramatic effect for all of our residents. We will need to be slightly careful over it, I think, due to PERDA, but I think this is so serious that just having an arbitrary discussion about it in August is probably not quite good enough. The other matter that I would raise is that, as I indicated earlier, I do think that the Canal Quarter District heat network also needs to come before OSC, and I was wondering whether the £1.2 million spend on the River Avon hydroelectric scheme also needs to come before us. Thank you.
Yeah, we can put that on the work. I've got the officers want to come in on the.
I didn't mean. I'm not trying to generate work. I'm trying to make sure that we are scrutinising something that is of such fundamental importance, and the impact on all of our residents and officers will be felt, and that's why I don't know if I'm proposing it or whether I'm just suggesting it, and I'm really happy for officers to come back to me, but we really need to be on top of this, and one meeting about it is not. Thank you.
I did like the terminology "generate work" when we're talking about hydroelectric, so I'm impressed with that. But I'll bring the officers in terms of the work programme and their comments on those two items.
Yes, thank you for raising that. And you're right, Councillor Wally-Huggins, this is a massive sort of change for the District Council, probably the biggest it's ever seen, and we're very aware of the scrutiny requirements going through that. And I think the Chief Executive's arranged for a scrutiny meeting next week to allow, as the key reports and the key stages come up, that we've always got scrutiny's opinion. I think the idea of booking a slot in August was to make sure that we had some clear time in the diary that was sort of the right side of PERDA, but also the right side well in advance of the submission for November, to make sure you had a good chance to make sure we've got your feedback. But that would sit outside of the general updating of sort of key decisions, which would always seek your view on as we went through. On the other, what were the other topics?
The hydro.
The hydro, yeah. At the moment, we're looking to sort of take forward a high-level feasibility of that. I'm happy to share that with the committee when that comes through. And there was one other thing you asked.
Canal Quarter.
The Canal Quarter, yes. Well, I'll give you an update on that in a second under the Cabinet, and then take a view on how you'd like to take that forward, I think was what I was going to say.
And
what is the scrutiny meeting next week? Have I just missed an email, which is obviously quite likely? What was that? Who is in that scrutiny meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, as you are aware, there is to be an extraordinary general meeting of full council to talk about any update regarding the local government review. But recognising the importance of OSC, as Tony's already mentioned as Deputy Chief Exec, our Chief Exec is arranging for a special meeting, hopefully on or around the 14th of March, with OSC to update. Okay.
So where are we at then on the standing agenda item? Because such is the gravity of it, you know. So one meeting next week, say, and then another meeting in August, I'm still standing by what I say, that I still think it should be potentially on every agenda until November. Thank you.
Yes. And thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Wally-Hoggins. On that political decision, that's for yourselves to make. I'm just bringing you up to date that as and when anything happens, the Chief Executive is already making sure that there are urgent meetings being arranged and notifying OSC. Any other decision you make is obviously up to yourselves as the politicians. I'm just bringing you up to date with the fact of the matter and what the Chief is definitely doing now.
Can I ask a question then for the, potentially for the April meeting, in terms of PERDA and the local government reorganisation, review, devolution, would there be any implications of that?
Again, thank you, Chair. At the moment, whilst not officially confirmed, it's likely that PERDA will be on around the 25th of March and run obviously until the elections are concluded. Now, in terms of discussions and what that looks like, we're very much bound by what the nature of reports and detail is coming out at the time. It is likely that if something is likely to impact, then it wouldn't be coming before any committee on or around April. Yeah.
We could do something from May onwards, though.
Yeah, or if the officers are just saying that if we have it from May onwards, we'll be talking. Obviously, we've got it next week in March. Then obviously, if we bear in mind the period of PERDA, and then from the meetings in May onwards, we then have it as a regular item. We'll be happy with that. Councillor Keithley, please.
Well, only to perhaps add, it seems if we're having updates, special meetings anyway, because decisions are having to be made, the danger of having it as a standing order, as a standing item, is that you've got it and you'd be talking about something when there's nothing happening. Because once a decision has been made, you might wait some considerable time to get feedback from that decision. That said, there's probably no harm in having it on as a standing item, even if there's nothing to report, is there?
Yeah, I think that was my take on this, that we'd rather know there's no news officially than not being told anything and things are going on behind the scenes. So I think that's a reasonable. Councillor Huggins, then I'll bring.
Do you need me to propose that and get a seconder in order for that to happen? I don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think we will seem to be happy in agreement on that. Mr. Perks, have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, all I was going to suggest is if the committee are happy, if I give an update at each OSC, so I tend to be here, if there's anything sort of more significant, I'll obviously make sure we've got the relevant officers there, but generally if I give you a brief update as part of the meeting, will that be acceptable?
If we don't do it, I think that we could be open to criticism. And I acknowledge the additional workload, Tony, but it's anyway, it's there, it's all ongoing anyway, really. So, yeah, thank you.
And the only thing I would potentially add on to that is that it's been mentioned the working group that's happening anyway, and I'm sure there are, I know you're on that working group, Councillor Wall-Huggins, and is anybody else on that working group, Councillor Rolfe? Whether you could potentially use that item as well to give some feedback from that working group as well, if we haven't had that information already. Would you be happy to do that? Again, I don't think that's probably unreasonable, is it? Yep. There's no disagreement anyway, so I think we'll take that. And the only other one potentially that I would like to put on is to do with management of public open spaces. I know that's been quite a high in the news quite a lot recently, and I know some of our residents do show their frustrations around about that and what we can and can't do in terms of these areas. So again, it will be good to know what we can do, what's our rights and responsibilities, what's likely to happen, etc., and a way forward as well on that. So it's okay on the future one. Councillor Keithy, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just on page 7, unscheduled items, as we're probably wanting to make sure we've got as much space as possible for important things, just to raise the issue of the platform housing group. And I think I might have been party to suggesting they came. One of the reasons was that there was, if you remember, a significant number of houses at Meon Vale that were requiring remediation, and it was taking a long time to get that to happen. I'm pleased to report that things have moved on since, and that remediation should be complete by June on all the 52 properties, timber frame properties. So it might be that it's not necessary for them individually to come in, because we're now sort of managing the performance of the housing associations through the task and finish group and the monitoring of those through our metrics. So that might be something that you would consider taking off this list.
Yep, no, that's brilliant. Always happy to learn if it's a successful conclusion. And if we haven't got any more problems, it can then be put back on anyway. So if members are happy with that. Right. Hopefully we've got some. Yeah.
Just there's the Avon Hydro scheme was mentioned. There were a couple of items brought up at the budget task and finish group about projects that we're hoping for sort of like briefings on before when they've moved further along. So just to let you know that those are still on the agenda and hopefully will be brought before the mid-year budget.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So the next item is to do with the Cabinet meeting of the 10th of March. We've got several items on there. Hopefully you've all got your agenda that struggled to come through my box on the wall. I haven't got a letterbox, so thank you for all the post people who do this and bring it to me. So big shout out to those. Yeah, we've got Mr. Pokes. Do you want to lead on any one of these?
Yes, if you're happy, Chair, I'll lead on the Canal Quarter, and then Marcia will lead on the Sherborne report, and we have representations at the back. We've got a few people in planning policy. We've got Louisa at the back, and we've got John Kevid with things online who will help us through the Honeybourne line reports.
Brilliant. Thank you. So whichever order you like. Go on, you can. Marcia, do you want to kick off first then, please?
Is this on the Sherborne one?
Yes, it
Would you
is.
like me to go and sit over there and be part of the company?
In a moment, I'm just about to say that.
But come back. Don't go. Please come back. Thank you, Marcia.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So the item that is being called first is the Sherborne Recycling Limited report. There are two parts to that report. There's a part which is for yourselves as members to note the content, but there's a second part to that report which talks about best practice governance. The report was drafted by myself with input from the Chief Exec, and it was looked over by not just Tony, but Councillor Gist as well as Councillor Juned. And in terms of the report, the point to make is that Tony has already declared that he sits as a director on behalf of Stratford District Council on the council companies. So he's a director twice of both of those companies. So it's really important to show the ethical walls here. And so today, Tony is wearing not his hat as Deputy Chief Executive, but his hat as Director for Sherborne when he responds to any queries you might raise. And of course, if you have any political questions on the report, Councillor Gist is also available at the back. But just to elaborate on the detail of the report, you'll see appended what is a performance report, in brief, a bit of a briefing note about how the company is doing, and Tony will speak to that if you have any questions around it and any other specific questions. And in terms of best practice governance, you will see at 5.1 in the report the recommendations that will go to Cabinet for approval, so that we maintain best practice within the law and in terms of guidance that we've received about how councils should manage companies. And so with that, I'll pause. Councillor Gist is also here now, sitting to the fore, if you have any questions.
Brilliant. Right then, Councillor Littlewood, do you want to start on this one, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just have a brief question, and it's not to do with the report. It's to do with corporate governance when we go forward into a unitary authority of some sort.
Malcolm, could you get a bit closer to
Sorry,
your...
did you not hear it's to do with how there are the district councils are and borough councils and others entities are shareholders into this operation as it stands. That will need to be changed, presumably, with unification and the abolition of the second tier local authorities. And it's not a criticism, it's just a clarification of how that process will be managed.
Got the monitoring and legal officer, whichever title Marcia wants to... Thank you, Marcia. Monitoring officer, I've been told off again.
Not told off, not at all, Chair. Just to clarify, the whole remit of the local government review, as you know, is huge. But in terms of what the company might look like into the future, that depends on, in fact, how we end up as a unitary and how we end up as a strategic authority. Without going into too much detail, that there would be an awful lot of legal structures that could be looked at to manage that in terms of reshaping the company so that it looks merged or it looks separated or whatever. But it's too early down the road to look at that because, of course, we've got other, I'm going to say, more pressing details to look at, and that's the issue of the unitary and also the strategic authority itself.
Thank you for that. You can have a follow-up, please.
I take what you say and understand that perfectly. But one of the issues with this report is the fact that there is a reducing marketplace and customers are have to be found, it's more competitive. So I think customers of the operation will need reassurance and comfort that this is going to be a continuing operation. And it's, I think it's a very good operation, and I think it needs to be supported and continue to be supported. But from the point of view, purely commercial point of view of the operation, they're seeking additional customers, and those customers need to be reassured that this entity will exist into the future. So I think, whereas I accept totally what you're saying about that, I think we need to be saying things to the market in terms of reassurance.
Yeah, from a company's perspective, you're right, Malcolm, Councillor Littlewood, to give you a full ranking title. We will need to sort of look at the shareholdings within the company, depending on how local government transpires, to make sure there's still an equitable split and we've got an effective board and effective decision making. I'm slightly less concerned about the points that you raised in terms of tonnage and sort of customers, because the bulk of the tonnage coming to the operation comes from the 8 partner councils, and I don't see that tonnage reducing significantly as a result of changing local government boundaries. So we should still have our main feedstock coming in. And in terms of the tonnage that we're looking to secure from the commercial market, again, despite local government reorganisation, people are still be throwing this stuff out. And what we're finding with the contracts that are coming out, it's not necessarily sort of whole council areas coming out at one time. It's parts of areas, parts from sort of different transfer stations and things like that. So I'm probably, whilst we're aware of, I think it's a valid thing to have on our sort of risk register, I think it's one that we can mitigate, and we should. I don't see it as challenging the viability of the company going forward. But yeah, well, I've made a mental note of it, and I'll keep it in mind.
Do you want to come back in?
Yeah. Just to say that Councillor Wally Hoggins.
Yeah, brilliant. I've got Councillor Wally Hoggins next, then Councillor Keithley, please.
Yeah, didn't we say at the last meeting, forgive me, that we were going to have, following on really from Malcolm's question, Councillor Littlewood's question, that we were going to have on all reports coming to committees, etc., and cabinet reports, we're going to have implications to do with devolution on there. Did we not say that? Did we not agree to it? Did I dream it?
I think it's... I thought we talked about it Yeah, we definitely talked about it. I think that, I think it's one of the things we can perhaps formalise when we get further down the road. I think again, because we've got the chief exec coming shortly as well, we can raise that issue.
I'm sure we said on every report that there should be now because of what we're facing. I'm sure that
I think we raised it in principle, and we were going to get something back. I'll bring the monitoring officer in. I've got the right title now.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. I'm happy to make a note. From what I'm hearing, the recommendation to Cabinet and Council would be that you'd want to see something that specifically addresses LGR in every report going forward. I'll make a note to that effect.
Who's next? Councillor Keithley, please. How can I forget?
Thank you, Chair. It was just really following up a point that Councillor Littlewood had made, asking Tony or suggesting that, in fact, we were going to be struggling maybe for business and that the existing customers would need to know that the facility wouldn't be closed down because perhaps all the waste would disappear. I'm just wondering, given that the fact we're having lots more houses and lots more people, Tony, do you see, in fact, the waste streams disappearing, or do you think we might have more waste to deal with?
A little bit of each, really. Generally, waste or recycling materials are reducing as consumers sort of demand less packaging and manufacturers sort of put less, sort of the bottles are getting thinner, the glass is getting lighter. And when you look at the tonnage we're sort of taking sort of into the sort of plant at the moment, it's lower on nearly every partner, despite the housing growth, than was projected in the business plan that we did in 2018-19. So that there is a general reduction in packaging. And there's also sort of pressure on sort of material through things like deposit return schemes as and when they come to fruition. So that there are downward pressures on tonnage in the market, which we would hope would sort of be balanced out by upward pressure on housing growth and sort of population growth, sort of feeding sort of more stock into the plant. The plant was built to cope with the partner tonnage with a small sort of commercial capacity to go alongside it. So we'd always envisaged that some of the spare capacity would be traded commercially to either other local authorities, or we found quite a good market in sort of other MRF providers where we cover each other's downtime for servicing and things like that. There's quite a lot of spot tonnage in the market. So I'm confident we should be able to keep the plant running. We may need to change the model of how we deliver it as any business sort of changes to response to conditions going forward, but I don't see the waste disappearing anytime soon.
Okay, thank you for that.
This is no pun intended on this occasion, and I can't think of a better phrase, but be interesting, obviously, if we, about commercial sensitivity and confidential items. Be interesting to know how different the business plan back in 2018-19, how it compares to what we're going forward now. You know, again, material difference, and that's no pun. You know, what changes there are. And you talked a bit about continuity when there's some maintenance has to be done. We all know with the previous case where we had that horrendous fire that it caused significant disruption and potential additional costs to ourselves. And again, I think one of the things would be resilience. Obviously, we've learned a lot of lessons. It was a purpose built. It's got AI. It's got all sorts of different features in. But if for some reason, it was out of operation for a long time, it could potentially have a significant impact on our income and on our expenditure as well. So I think that would perhaps be when you're doing future reports. I'm not telling you to suck eggs or anything like that. Future results, how we've got the resilience, how we're covering certain eventualities, and how we're trying to safeguard this asset of ours, which is having a positive impact on our recycling and our performance as well. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to pick both of those questions up. They're covered to an extent in the report that Mr. Allison circulated, was just the update. In terms of tonnage compared to business plan, when we did the analysis of the 8 partners' tonnage sort of back at business plan stage, we were expecting just over 121,000 tonnes of recycling coming into the plant annually. Based on our first year's trading, we've got 112,000 tonnes, so we're about it's around about 7% reduction on what we'd anticipated, and I think we'd realistically probably have expected it to have grown rather than shrunk when we were doing the business plan, which is reflective of probably the economy and the changes in packaging that we've seen going forward. So that's about where we are in that point, and we've been able to trade most of that capacity away. We entered an agreement with West Northants District Council, which is a fairly long-term agreement, to take some of their recyclate. And as I say, we do sort of trade on the spot market with spare capacity, and we've had some success in that over the year. In terms of resilience, you're absolutely right. These plants are vulnerable, particularly to fires, and there have been some catastrophic losses of plants, including our own, or the plant that we use at Pure. We did have a fire at the plant back just before Christmas, based on a lithium battery that was crushed, which are a big problem in waste. I did some, you may have seen me on the telly on Midlands today, sort of advocating not putting lithium batteries in your recycling. Hopefully that message got through. When we built the plant, we were quite aware of this, and I don't wish to be complacent by any level, but we've got quite advanced sort of fire detection and suppression systems in the plant, which is partly the cause of some of the delays in opening it, which we've been trading through. They were effective in this instance, and we had the plant back up and running in 3 days, which would have been potentially a catastrophic loss at other plants. So I think that's proven to extent that the systems work. You're always at the mercy of a larger fire would be more complex to deal with, and we still have potentially some longer-term upgrades to the plant to do as a result of the fire damaging one of the conveyor belts. It's working, it's functional, but whether it's deterred its long-term feasibility, we're looking at that as a company at the moment. So yeah, we're very aware of fires. In terms of contingencies, yes, there is we've been taking some fires from one of the other MRFs, some material from one of the other MRFs who had a fire more recently. So yeah, we are looking to put contingency arrangements in place.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I always like it when you say I'm right about something, so we'll make sure that's recorded properly. Councillor Fradley, Jenny Fradley, please. Sorry.
It's interesting. I mean, are we actually doing a very intensive education programme with the residents about where they put their batteries? We've had separate battery collection for a long time, which has been very, very useful. But I think if people are getting a little bit careless about where the batteries go, because they do have catastrophic results if you put the battery in the wrong place.
Yes, the big risk we have now is the lithium batteries, and when the cell walls break down, you get quite large fires that are difficult to put out. They're a problem in materials recycling plants. They're also a problem in waste trucks where things get compacted. And increasingly you're seeing them, I was just reading an article earlier this morning about the problem where people put them in the entrances to their flats, and that's some quite catastrophic effects. We are using social media, we're using our communication channels both as a company and as a district council to try and bring that to the attention of residents as much as possible. How effective that is, I don't know. You can only speak to people who are listening and looking at that at the time, but any opportunity to get that message out would be very welcome.
I'm very aware of waste and batteries and mini sort of electrical goods and things like that, and how they should be got rid of. I'm not aware of anything that's coming out from the district. To me, I've not picked up anything on the dustbin. Have there been any notices put on dustbins? We've done that in the past. So put your batteries elsewhere. I think it's got to be, as it could be so catastrophic, I think it's got to be a bit more than just going onto a website. It's got to be directly in front of people's eyes.
Please, yeah. Any other questions? Sarah, Councillor Huggins, please.
Yeah, just to go on for the battery matter, I wonder if we need to be innovative in our approach to this, because as you say, it could be catastrophic, and also we've been very lucky that nobody's been actually injured in any of these dustbin lorry fires and at the plants. And I wonder, is there a way of adding a little box to the side of a grey waste bin that says, batteries or if it's if you can recycle them, that you attach that box there. It's just a way of making people think that we need to do that. Yes, I know there's an expense there, but there is some slack in the budget to provide that. And it's just a way of making people aware, A, that they can recycle batteries, but also it just keeps them safe, and it's a visual reminder of where the batteries need to be. I do think we perhaps need to be a bit more innovative in our approach to that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Any other questions? I'm reassured that there's going to be reports back to Cabinet twice a year, if I've read that correctly. And again, obviously, we'll be getting regular sight of this is when we discuss any information going to Cabinet as part of the OSC agenda. So I think it's wait and see. I think it's certainly a positive impact on the way we do things and helping with our recycling as well. I'm, with my fire and rescue hat on, reassured that many built-in measures have been built in to try and make it as resilient and safe as possible, but you'll never make it 100%, especially when you suddenly discover lithium batteries, and I do worry about what other batteries might be starting to be put there. Now we've got a lot of other equipment powered by lithium batteries, etc. So yeah, a great job by all involved. Happy to receive the information on a regular basis here, and thank you for all involved on this one. So, and you come in back up again, please, Mr. Bix. We miss you, we do already. Yeah. We'll wait for Danny and we'll get him ready. After the next one, do the Honeyborn?
Yep, that's, you have to introduce that one.
Right then, the next one, Louise has kindly come down to sort us out and finish the Honeyborn. She's going to keep us on track on this one. Sorry, Peter, I had to bring that one. I do apologise. Sorry, Louisa, I do apologise for the bad dad jokes. If you just want to give us a brief update of where we are and what any potential implications or things we should be looking at on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this Cabinet item is relating to a strategic outline business case looking at the potential for the reinstatement of the Stratford to Honeyborn railway line. So this SOBC is a refresh of one that was originally prepared in 2021, and it was commissioned by a project steering group which consisted of a range of local authorities, train operators, local interest groups and organisations such as the West Midlands Rail Executive. And Stamtec were the consultants appointed to undertake the SOBC in March 2024. So this SOBC has looked at which options should be potentially considered to enhance the public transport connectivity from Stratford-upon-Avon to the south and through Honeyborn. So a total of 23 options which could improve the public transport connectivity have been considered within the report, of which 5 were shortlisted, and 3 of those 5 have been excluded for economic reasons, leaving 2 potential options that could be considered further, which are the Cross Stratford tram train and the full reopening of the Stratford to Honeyborn Junctions heavy railway link. So Cabinet members are being asked to note the SOBC in order for it to be published and used as evidence to inform the preparation of the South Warwickshire local plan.
For that, Mr. Perks, anything would you like to add on this?
No, I think Louise has covered everything, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions.
We've also got Mr. Careford as well. Councillor Wiley-Huggins, you want to open the baton on this one, please?
Oh, yes. Right. So we've revisited something that we already did in 2021, and I'd like to know the cost implications of the opening of this line for this council as it stands, because I'm sure I read a report recently that we would have to subsidise this rail link, and where would those subsidies be coming from, please?
I think the cost of opening the line, Louisa, do sort of jump in, or John, if you have anything to add, would be determined by the outline business case if we took it to the next stage. This is just looking at which options would potentially be feasible. So I don't think we have a number of sort of what the funding requirement would be. But Louisa, John, please feel free.
Yes, you're right. We don't have a figure at the moment for the cost, so that would have to be determined through further studies if it was taken forward. So during the outline business case.
Yeah. I'll bring Mr. Careford in. Miss John, do you want to come in, please? Just add something like that. Hope you're well.
Louisa said what I was going to say, so yeah.
Brilliant. Councillor Wiley-Huggins, please.
Yes, we have. I wondered also if within this, looking at the strategic outlines for transportation around Stratford, if we've actually looked at how to get residents so that they can make use of HS2, please, because we know that they need to be in Birmingham in order to connect themselves in that rapid train service to London. So what have we done regarding connectivity with HS2, please?
Louisa, John?
Well, HS2 was outside of the scope of this particular study, so I might defer to Tony or John if they have anything.
John, have you got some thoughts on this, please?
Yeah, so Louisa's absolutely right. It's not part of this report, but there's been nothing recent to my knowledge, but I recall that there were discussions about you getting to Solihull, and then there's I think meant to be a transit system from Solihull to Arden Cross and HS2. So we can perhaps follow that up as in terms of where the discussions got to in terms of getting from Stratford to Solihull. But it's not part of this piece of work. But I think this is the point of the what the consultant was recommending, and I think is really valid, is that you can't see this piece of infrastructure, this in isolation. We need to see it in that regional picture and how it fits in with things like HS2, but and other rail services, and does it contribute and help actually provide improved services right across the region, including to HS2. So I think it all ties in, and that's what I think they're saying. There needs to be further work about how that actually can be achieved.
Right, I'll bring Councillor Wiley-Huggins with a follow-up, then Councillor Keithley, and then Councillor Jenny Fradley. So
do we have agreement then that this report should include connectivity with HS2, and that is currently I know it's on the Honeybourne Railway line, but it's part of a greater thing to do with the transport networks around Stratford? Or am I losing the plot here? Because that's my don't nod. It's just that I do think HS2 is a significant piece of infrastructure that has gone in at great expense, and we do need to know where that. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Right. Carry on, Councillor Wiley-Huggins, please.
I think that's a most regrettable incident. Are we going to be expecting a report to do with connectivity with HS2 then? Perhaps separate to this?
John, Mr. Kerford, please.
Yeah, well, I think just to reiterate the point, this report was looking at the reopening of the specific line Stratford to Honeybourne. What the consultants have concluded is that actually you can't do that in isolation, and a further regional report doing just as Councillor Wiley-Huggins has suggested is required. So I would expect that if we were to do that for the regional report, and this does not commit this council to doing that, and we wouldn't do it ourselves. We'd be part of a consortium to do that. But if that further regional report were to occur, then yes, I would expect that it would include the interrelationship with HS2. But it's not for this study, which is simply looking at the line and how you might take that forward, and the conclusion being you should take it forward in a wider context.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Yeah, as having HS2 run 700 metres past our town, and we're not on a train line anywhere, and we see a high-speed line that's potentially going to go past us. It is just quite frustrating. So, Councillor Keithley, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, actually, I think John has said it now, because I think this is just one piece of the jigsaw. What we're looking at is accepting that this forms part of the evidence for the South Warwickshire local plan as it stands, but the recommendation is that we might need to look at what the wider network in addition to this. So as far as the Stantec refresh was concerned, it's kind of like a fairly well-defined scope, and we're going to get down lots of rabbit holes if we start talking about other stuff that's not in this recommendation.
Yep, brilliant. Next one is Councillor Jenny Fradgy, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've been involved with the Honeybourne line at a local level for probably 20 years. It's come and gone. People support it, people don't. The important thing is that it stays there as a protected route in case in the future it's needed. It doesn't have a business case, as I understand it, to go forward at the moment, but I don't think it should be ignored as a potential asset sometime down the track in the future, whether it's light rail, road or whatever. A lot of conversations that I've had as a county councillor have been around this, but that's not appropriate to this discussion.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Next one is Councillor Johnston, please.
I just want to agree with Councillor Fradley. She's made the point I was going to make. I was part of the scrutiny of HS2 when I was a member of the County Council. And there's always been an issue with the whole design about the connectivity of the route along its whole length. If there was more connectivity as HS1 was designed, it would be much more useful to local people. At the moment, I think it has pretty well no benefit to us. It will save you, I think, a quarter of an hour or something between the difference now between Warwick Parkway to Marylebone, and you'd have to drive to whatever they're going to call it. It isn't Birmingham International. Find somewhere to park, and you'll use up all the benefit and time.
Yeah, I'm going to say my biggest one. We haven't got any rail lines, Chiltern or at Southam. So if it had stopped there, that would have been some benefit. But we haven't. Even though it's going past us, I think. I'll bring in Councillor Littlewood then. I've got a couple of points to raise.
Thank you, Chair. I think much has been said. I I agree with Councillor Keithley. Actually, we've got to think globally, but then act locally. And the one thing that sticks out in my mind of acting locally on this project is that it's all Trans-Stratford, and in its day, of course, there were links through into the centre of Stratford. You could do that, but since then we've built houses on them, and so what is the practicality? We're not going to build a tunnel like HS2, I'm sure. And probably flood at the moment anyway. But how practical is it to go through Stratford as a whole? I know this has been around for 4 or 5 years now, this idea, but so presumably at some point previously that was considered and a route has been identified, and I'd just like to understand what the practicalities of that are, please.
Mr. Careford, do you want to comment on that one, please? Well, on several things, yeah.
Sorry, I can't see whether Louisa or Tone, Mr. Boats, have got their hands up, but so apologies if I'm interjecting before others. Louise have got more knowledge than I have, but just to be clear, the route has not been built on. The route is either used for footpath, greenway, or highway. So the route is clear in that respect. However, there is a prospect that because of capacity issues on the network, on the highway network, conflict with vehicular and pedestrian traffic, requirements of the Office of Rail Regulation, that you would need to dive under Evesham Place rather than cross it on the level that was the original. So that's where the prospect of a tunnel comes from, but the route has not been built on. It is clear in other than it's being used for transport purposes. Thank you.
So one of the potential disincentives, disbenefits, or whatever phrase you want to use, is that it could significantly impact on the greenway that's been there for a while and is well used.
Well,
Mr. Perks will come in, John. Sorry,
John, you were slow on the uptake, so I've stepped in. It's the trouble, we can't see each other. Yeah, the major challenges with this proposal are that the Greenway is an established leisure route. People like it. It's a good nature corridor. It's difficult to see how you would maintain that alongside a heavy rail solution, which seems to be the most viable sort of thing going forward. And also within the heavy rail thing, you would then need to connect it to Stratford Station, which we've got Evesham Place in between, and we've got transport infrastructure, as John said, where we're not encouraging a level crossing anymore. So that's quite a difficult piece of civil engineering and social disturbance, to not understate it. The other option of a lighter weight sort of tram is more deliverable in some ways. It would have less impact on the Greenway. You could potentially take that through some sort of alongside sort of the traffic on the highway. It seems in some ways more deliverable, but is probably less desirable to customer use who want to get on a train and get from one place to another without changing modes of transport and having to wait for interchanges. Those, I think, in a nutshell, are the key issues that would need to be addressed if this were to proceed.
Councillor Littlewood, please.
Well, I was going to ask a follow-up question, which Mr. Perks has just answered, probably. But it seems to me that the limitations, as Mr. Careford described it, and they are limitations where there may be a route through, but they are very, very, very constrained routes. That would necessitate using a tram system, a light railway system, and that would also, because the part of the routeway is certainly a heavily used roadway as a bypass around Stratford, that would need road widening, and I still go back to the fact that there's infrastructure in place that would have to be demolished, and so I wonder the scope of this report would need to encompass all of that, and I'm sure it will do. But it seems to me that the limitations would suggest that only 4C is worth pursuing in actual fact. But then you will not get any connectivity to the main railway stations except at Stratford and at Leamington, etc.
Thanks for that. Councillor Keighley, please.
Well, just to add to Councillor Littlewood's synopsis of it, this is just a report with a certain scope, and there's an awful lot more questions to ask. So we could spend all day talking about the wheres and what might ifs, but this really is going forward as a piece of evidence for the South Warwickshire local plan. So some more work needs to be done on the wider network, and then there would, even if you were to look at this or a tram, you'd need to conduct some more detailed business case before you did anything else.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very many fair points. I noticed we spent on paragraph 1.9 £3,000 towards the cost of this, and obviously there was be a reasonable amount of officer time on this as well. So it does come with a cost every time we do this, and this is what we have to scrutinise as well. I'm taking some reassurance that this will be used as part of some of the evidence of the South Warwickshire local plan, so therefore there is some certain amount of justification for doing this. and again, I think I've raised this at the budget meeting, that I've got concerns that we're raising expectations without being able to deliver them in the relatively short to medium term. And, you know, we do need to be transparent about the challenges that our colleagues, particularly on the right, have more eloquently advocated than I would ever do. So I do think we might have to consider, or I'd like to list to be considered, yes, it's part of South Warwickshire local plan. Yes, we need to have a whole more strategic option in terms of different transport in our area. And I won't mention HS2 again because we are talking about this, not HS2. I've been told off again, sorry. And I do think this is important, but sometimes, you know, this is a refresh of the 21 SOBC, so it's not been too long ago. So I just think we've got to be realistic of what we're doing, not raising expectations that we can't deliver on it in the short and in the long term. So I think it's right that we've asked the officers to talk about this and get things in the air, and the fact that some of the information is going to be used in the South Warwickshire local plan. So I think that'll be our feedback to Cabinet for Monday. Any other points on this? Or no? Brilliant, thank you for that. And the third item we're going to be talking about from the Cabinet meeting is the Q3 Performance Monitoring Report for 24-25. Oh, Simon, well done, Simon. Thank you for... Guess, normally see you up there. Yeah. We'll
do Simon first.
Yeah, and so we'll do Simon and this, and then we'll do the Canal Quarter as well. So, Simon, do you want to give us a brief synopsis? We've got you here in person rather than having to look at you online. Not that it was, yeah, we like looking you online as well. So, but sometimes we can't hear you very well, and that's so. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, this is the Q3 Performance Monitoring Report. It's all for the performance achieved during Q3 October to December 2024. In the report, you'll see that we monitor the council plan and the key performance indicators. The summary for the council plan actions in Appendix 1, I've seen that we had 31 actions due by the end of Q3, of which 27 were achieved and 4 actions were not achieved. Of the 4 actions not achieved, one was surrounding the Stratford Strategic Partnership, was something that was deferred to Q2 2025. There's something around SIL, but that's expected in the next quarter. The electric vehicle charging strategy hasn't been done. And the other one that was outstanding is actually the report that's just been discussed on Honeybourne Rail Link that has dropped into the Q4 of the council plan actions. Regarding the performance of the organisation, 72% were on target as at Q3 and 6 were not. Corrective actions are shown in the report of what they're doing to get that back on track. And there are a couple of indicators that still haven't been reported on planning, but they will be reported from Q4 onwards. We've now sorted that issue out. And it was really open to the floor now for any questions. What was it? Okay.
Right. Any questions so far? Yeah, I'll say this is just a general one. Obviously, you sort of like bring this all together, consolidate it and obviously sometimes I imagine it's like herding cats to get the information back. What are the department's views? What are their frustrations? How easy is it for them to get the information in time? Have they got any frustrations that they would like to pass back to say, well, Councillor Crumpus, Chair of Scrutiny, we're having problems with this because of X, Y, and Z, or this benchmark or target needs to be more precise? Is there anything coming back from the departments?
Chair, no, it's all fine. No, we don't get much feedback anyway, so it's all good.
Yeah, I'm going to say, and I noticed on page 65 of the Cabinet report that we've got the council will receive a feasibility study in relation to the Stratford-on-Avon rail link. So we are sort of like interlinked, and we are are working together. So it just showed that we don't always make these things up as we go along. We do try and bring them together at the same time. It's on my turn. Councillor Wally Hoggins, please, if you want to come in.
Yes. Do we, on page 7, the council implement a programme to reduce the council CO2 emissions, introduce appropriately certified HVO as a fuel source. How are we checking that it's appropriately certified? Have we got any, are we keeping a log of those certificates? And I've noticed that there's no note that this HVO hasn't been rolled out across the district either. Thank you.
Mr. Pokes?
We'd have to ask the head of community services to sort of come up with the tickets for the HVO. If people are keen to see them, I can get Julie to report on that.
Yep, Councillor Wildhagen.
And also the reporting of the fact that it's not the whole district that are having the benefit of HVO fuels in their dustbin lorries. It's not noted here.
It's noted in that it says that HVO is now used in the SDC waste fleet, which is true. So all of the waste fleet operating out of our depot where there is an HVO tank available is using that fuel. There are 2 vehicles operating out of the Warwick depot, I think it's 2, that are still using sort of fossil fuel.
I'm saying I think it's disingenuous not to actually specify that within this report, to just say that it's SDC. If you're living in Southam with Stratford District Council, you wouldn't necessarily know that they were being that they had non-HVO trucks. So I think that there is that additional detail is required within this report. Thank you.
Yeah, so I did, obviously living there. I think it is, the figures I'd got, there was 15% of the district. The figures I got back from the head of neighbour contract services, I can never remember the titles. It was around about 15% of the district was still being serviced by vehicles from our joint contract with Warwick DC operating the depot on the Heathcote, I think.
Yeah, I think we've been very open in the public about what we can and can't achieve. When this initiative was sort of put to us, we looked as extensively as we could about whether we could sort of put it into the Warwick depot and found we couldn't. We were open about that. We've declared here what we have done and what we have achieved. I don't think we're trying to mislead anybody. We've done what we can and we've explained that here.
Forgive me, but actually you haven't. It's just the SDC waste fleet. Stratford District Council, if you put the fleet that is based in Stratford-on-Avon, then that is slightly different to saying the global SDC waste. So I think that there should be a note in here, in this report, to say the specifics of that, of the impracticalities of having that across the district. This by no means, I just think for clarity's sake.
Yeah, I'll bring the monitoring officer in on, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor. I'm just looking at the heading, really, CP2E, which says to be a local authority leader in the reduction of our own carbon footprint. And when you go to the particular heading before the bullet point starts, it says the council will implement a programme to reduce the council's CO2 emissions, including, and that would be obviously by its very nature across the whole of the district. So that would be the first point that I would just make, just to clarify what that is referencing. But I also take your point, which is the concern about where the actual trucks are servicing. And clearly we can take that away to be looked at.
Yeah, so I'll just add to that. Yeah, I think that because not all members of the public would realise that we've got a joint contract with Warwick District Council and the east of the district are serviced, because they're closer to Warwick than they are to Stratford, are serviced by vehicles operated by WDC that use diesel rather than HVO. We've had this before, and I did speak to Chief Executive that there's implication that the council's waste fleet is the ones that collect all the council's waste. So therefore, people don't know that some of the waste is collected by WDC vehicles as opposed to SDC vehicles. So I think it was just. I think there need to be some clarity. If that was the case, HVO used in SDC waste fleet, that's fine. That's a statement of fact. Can't argue with that. But in brackets, by the way, 15% of ours is collected by WDC waste. But perhaps I'm being pedantic, but I think we'll talk about communications. Thank you.
I just wanted to come back and just reiterate the point that was made earlier by the Deputy Chief Exec, Tony, which is taking the points that you've referenced today. The other point that I hope was made clear by, and you heard when Tony said it earlier, was that everything has been transparent as far as possible around this particular outcome here. But it doesn't mean that, obviously, that we haven't heard what you've said today.
Brilliant. Okie dokie. I think I was going to say visitors vehicles. It might run on this one, but no, we won't go on. Any other points on the monitoring report for Q3? No. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Sorry, I was reading through, just checking what I'd written. If I refer to page 3 of the 3 pages and the penultimate section, which is percentage of NN and DR collected, I just wanted to clarify the numbers there, because the statement is it's on target, but to me it looks like it's not. But
Yes, Councillor, I'll be clear, but the target is actually for Q3 81.98, and the performance was 83.89. So in fact, it is on target. Yeah, the 98.2 is the overall figure for the end of the year. Maybe I'll make that clear. I could make that clear in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
House members for this item? No? Yeah. Right then, so thank you, Simon. You've got to wait quite lightly on this one, so obviously well explained and that, thank you. We'll now move on to a different item on the agenda, but it's associated and that using the chair's prerogative. And agreed by the monitoring officer. Quick, write that down, Howard. A quick update from Mr. Perks, please.
This on the Canal Quarter?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you a quick introduction to the report. We're taking a report to Cabinet on Monday with an update of the latest position on the Canal Quarter district heating system. This derives from a project we've been looking at under the climate change emergency. And it's district heating is identified as a way of addressing that within our local plan, and the Canal Quarter has been identified as a potential site for having a district heating system. And what we have here is the latest in a series of studies which are looking about the sort of practicality of how this network could be brought into reality. And it presents sort of an outline business case that starts to look at the range of delivery models that could be used to turn this from a concept into reality. Probably the key diagram is probably at section 111, paragraph 111, where it looks at a sort of range of options that range from sort of self-delivery, where the council sort of build and operate the network itself, through to an entirely sort of third-party system where we stand away and let somebody else do it on an entirely commercial basis. And what the report recommends, in summary, is that we use the concession model, which is one of the options within there. And it seeks to do some further work to develop this concept over the next 12 months. It's clear in the report that we're not recommending sort of going into the commercialisation stage of this project at this stage, because there are too many unknowns, too many risks, and a limited sort of amount of interest from existing sort of premises around the site. So what they're proposing is to do some sort of further work to develop this short of going into commercialisation and taking sort of significant financial risks to sort of better understand those. The cost of that, I think Councillor Waller-Huggins asked me to confirm, is around about £40,000. that's set out within the report. We have an underspend on the existing sort of budget from the last piece of work around about £3,500. So is the proposal to sort of take £36,600 from the Climate Change Fund to fund the work going forward. So in terms of recommendations, the Cabinet are being asked to basically to accept this outline business case as a piece of evidence, which will be useful in the sort of South Yorkshire local plan process, to endorse the principle of using the concession delivery model, because otherwise we'd need to explore all 5 models, which would cost more and sort of be a less valuable piece of work, and to sort of do a piece of scoping that I've just described. So that's what we'll be presenting to Cabinet on Monday, and obviously we value any of your comments.
Councillor Wally-Huggins, please.
Has this report taken into account, or do you think there is need for a caveat? Because, forgive me, there are other people in this room that were on Planning Committee on Wednesday, but I thought that Planning Committee had not approved plans for the Canal Quarter on Wednesday, or something to that. You know, until we know if there's anything going to be built here, you know, this is officer time at the end of the day, and, you know, we are busy, officers are busy people. We've got untold matters now to deal with, and this to me seems like a total waste of time and money and resources. But again, I asked for an update with regard to the Planning Committee meeting on Wednesday, please. You know, because I acknowledge that £36,500, it's still £36,500 worth of council taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you to Councillor Wally-Huggins. I understand there was a proposal presented to the Planning Committee for some development in the Canal Quarter that was refused Planning Permission on Wednesday night on the grounds that it fell outside of compliance with the master plan that we have for that area. That was just for a small part of the site. On the wider site, a lot of the land is currently being acquired by Homes England. We are talking to Homes England about the potential for a heat network. I'll be honest with the committee, I'm not sort of getting much love for that coming back from Homes England, and to be honest, nor from anybody else. So far from it for me to advise the committee, but I think as a minimum it would seem irrational not to endorse the business case that we've had done, the first recommendation, and the principle of supporting the concession model seems sound. As to whether you feel that we should sort of spend any more money on this at this stage, that's something the committee can take a view on and feed that through to Cabinet, who will form their own view of that on Monday. But any comments in those areas I think would be appreciated by the Cabinet.
Yeah, well, I for one think that if it's Homes England that are looking to develop this area and they're not showing the love that you're describing here, I think our money, resources and time of officers could be deployed in better ways. And I think that we could be kind and say this is deferred for review in 2 years' time or whatever. But I see this as a worthless piece of work. Thank you.
Councillor Keithley, please.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a fair question, isn't it, as to whether or not we are spending time and effort and resources on something that doesn't have a lot of legs potentially. However, what I would say is that, and I sat on the Planning Committee on Wednesday, I'm expecting further developments further developments coming forward very quickly, actually, that would perhaps fit better with the vision of the long-term vision of the quarter. I don't see that. I mean, the fact that a couple of applications are refused doesn't mean to say that this development is stopped in its tracks. So I think that in the fullness of time, this does have legs, because otherwise a lot of properties are going to be just running off electricity for heating and water, and this provides in the very long run a much more sustainable district heating solution, which we should aspire to. And one of the dangers of putting this back now is that any developments that come forward sooner rather than later will not have the option to connect up to this district heating system. And that's one of the problems, that we'll end up with a development that's half and half. So I think we need to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Keith. I'm sure that's been noted by officers. I've got a couple of questions on, it's page 83 of the report. Yeah, on the financial, 5.2.3, the 36,600 remaining from the residual part of the 40,000. It says it's coming from the climate change department's budget to cover that. Is that the revenue budget, or is it coming from the reserve?
That would be coming from the climate change reserve.
And would we be able to have a balance sometime of what's left in that reserve after that funding?
Yes, of course, we can give an update on that. It's reported as part of the budget monitoring, which will come to you next month anyway. But yeah, we can do that. It's not a problem.
That's fine. I'll bring Councillor Huggins in a minute. And the only other thing as well, because we've got concerns about this, the 40,000, could there be an initial scoping or phase of the 40,000, you know, just a quarter of it, for example, 10,000, which would really concentrate to say, yes, this is. I'm just, would the 40,000 be spent in one go? Can we do it in stages? And then after some certain stages, think, oh, we're not going to go area, we'll defer it and then come back. So it's just some thoughts of that. So I hope you got the point there, Mr. Perks. Yeah, Mr. Careford and then Councillor Littlewood, please. John, do you want to come in, please?
Yep, thank you. I just want to touch upon the discussion really about the relationship to some of the developments that have sort of already been granted or were seeking consent. Chair, may I just share my screen if that's okay? Just this map is in the consultant's report, but hopefully that's working. I'll just try and make it a bit bigger, actually.
Yeah, we've got it, John. Yeah.
Yeah, super. So the canal course is a very large piece of area of Stratford, and it's I don't know if you see my cursor, but it's all that land sort of with the buildings in green essentially around here. So that's the eastern half. Then you've got this bit here, which is Mason's Road. And then it also extends, which isn't shown on this map, up here on Timothy's Bridge Road. And the applications that have been referred to, so this site here, which is the old DCS land, and the Morgan Sindel building, which is just top of the screen there, that's the land that is being looked at by Homes England. And is already consented, and then there are some other applications in here that were refused. So you know, I think as Councillor Keithy said, there is a lot of more opportunity that this could bring regarding the canal quarter, and that's why I think there is merit in exploring it further. And in any event, phase 1, which is the orange on this map, is technically outside of the canal quarter regen zone as defined in the core strategy, but relevant to it. So I think I just want to make that point, and also number 19 there. That's the gateway site that Stratford Council is looking to bring forward in partnership with the West Midlands Combined Authority. So it's got those wider interrelationships. But I hopefully, Chair and members, that sort of clarification is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that, John. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, one has to admire the ambition of this scheme. There's no doubt about that. But having read through Appendix 1, one of the clear statements in Appendix 1 is that there is no viability to this scheme unless Phase 2 it goes ahead. And indeed, if I look at the consultation and members' comments on page 82 of the pack, Councillor Coucher asked for a paragraph to be added that the project is only viable if existing property owners sign up to the scheme. That's not what I'm hearing is happening. So there's great concern that is this dead before it starts? And I think a lot of work, I'm sure, will be done if this was to be taken forward as a project to be studied. That getting people to buy into this is not going to is got to be critical, to the overall project success. Otherwise, there's an implication of very high costs for this. For the whatever local authority exists into the future.
Any comments on that, John or Tony? Mr. Burks?
I think Councillor Littlewood has identified the nub of the issue. It's the project, the ambition of it is to be admired, but we're getting closer to the point, if we haven't reached it, about deciding whether or not this is practical to take forward and whether it's something the Council want to do, which is what the Cabinet will be asked to sort of consider on Monday. So.
Yeah, I think we'll make those points over. I think that's a fair point. Any other comments on that? I do think this is another one that could, because there's complexity in its size and importance, we have this on our radar on a regular basis as part of the work programme. I don't think it'd be unreasonable to do so, but not come back, come back when there's information or progress on this, not just to be there for the sake of being there. So I think it's important. So if, that's our request to officers, that yes, we would like to be updated, but only updated when there's some meaningful information that we can scrutinise. I think that's quite reasonable. Right. Any other things on the Cabinet? I think we've sneaked an extra one in that wasn't on the agenda, so thank you for indulging me with that. We'll move on to item number 7, urgent business. Haven't got any really urgent business, but through the miracle of modern technology, I've been made aware that PERDA starts on the 21st of March. 21st of March. So that's 2 weeks today. So I know it's always it's always different. So again, some secret source came to me in Howard that it was a reliable source that it was the 21st. So please note that. So I know at whatever time it is, at 12:47, declare the meeting closed. Thank you.